Right, hello and welcome to this session, which is called Advertising's Role in a Sustainable World. We've got four really brilliant leaders from different parts of the advertising ecosystem. Debbie Klein from Sky, Ronan Harris from Google, Nicola Mendelsohn from Facebook, and Hamish Nicklin from Dentsu. So I think we should jump straight into things. We know that COP26 is taking place, and the issue of climate change really feels all-encompassing, even without this conference. So if I ask all of you the same question, but I'm going to start with Debbie, give us a sense of where environmental sustainability sits within your business right now. What's the importance being placed on it? And I guess where's that all being driven from?
Hi, Gideon. Great to be here. So our net zero strategy really sits right at the heart of the business because we're looking to really help drive transformational change. That actually, you mentioned COP, we're one of the principal partners and media partner of the summit. And going back to 2020, we set an ambitious target to achieve net zero by 2030 across our entire business. So whilst that strategy was driven by our bigger picture team, which is our sustainability team, what we've seen is there's so much passion and commitment running right across the company. So we're seeing great progress in all quarters of the company. All of our Sky Originals since 2019 actually are now certified carbon neutral. And we've put forward a planet test, which ensures that we've got editorial and commissioning teams right across the business thinking about the environment when they are on and off screen. We're opening Sky Studios Elstree in 2022, which will be the most sustainable production facility. And just last week, we launched the world's first carbon neutral TV with Sky Glass. So lots of examples of where we can, in our own business, make a difference. And then in the industry, being a founding member of Ad Green and supporting Stephen and Joe in the aid, it's making sure that the industry is doing its bit. And of course, working with you on the Sky Zero Footprint Fund. So I think in all aspects of the business, people are really getting behind it. It's not just an environmental team thing.
I'm going to go to Ronan. Now, Ronan, you don't have responsibility for Google all around the world, but tell us what Google's doing. You're a very big business, and I think specifically from an advertising perspective.
Sure. Well, this is a topic that's been at the heart of our founders' way of running the business since inception. And at the end of our first decade in 2007, we were one of the first major companies to be carbon neutral in our operation. And since then, we've continued to look for ways to innovate on this. By the end of our second decade, we were the world's largest purchaser of renewable energy. So that was another big milestone for us. And recently, we've just announced the kind of goals we've set ourselves for the next phase of what we want to accomplish. And they come in two parts. The first one is in relation to our own energy consumption. And by 2030, we want to be using carbon-free energy everywhere at every hour of every day. And at the moment, the technology isn't quite there to do that, but we see a way to get there. So that's an exciting and kind of challenging endeavor. The other thing we've committed to is helping users make more sustainable choices. And we're starting to innovate in our consumer-facing products. And some of the examples there would be something like maps, for example, showing the most eco-friendly route on Google Maps, where we ingest information about, the traffic, the elevation of routes, and try and give users a choice. A similar thing in flights. So showing people what is the difference in carbon emissions from one flight to the next, and hopefully at least give them the information where they can make choices based on price, but also on the carbon emissions. And we'll continue to build that into more and more products as we can find the right sources of information to be able to present to users. And then, of course, in terms of Ad Net Zero, we are big supporters of the AA's Ad Green initiative. We're on the advisory board, and we've been working to help develop things like its carbon calculator. And we're already starting to pilot that ourselves in some of our own marketing campaigns here in the UK. And it's something I think we all need to start to look at and start to use. And the other thing we're doing is looking at the ways in which we can quantify carbon emissions through the serving and delivering of our ad campaigns. So whether that's reducing emissions from media planning and buying, things like out-of-home ad space that has a positive environmental impact, for example. So we're looking at the going further downstream to try and find where we can innovate there as well.
Okay, good. Now, Nicola, welcome, and you do have a new global role. So congratulations. But tell us what's Facebook's doing about sustainability, and I guess where it's being driven from inside the company and so on.
So I'm delighted to be here, and thank you, Gideon, for having me. So from a Facebook perspective, look, this is an incredibly important issue across all areas of the business and all levels. And I think we've made real progress as a company. So, for example, we've now reached net zero emissions, and we've got a wider target of net zero emissions across our entire supply chain by 2030. Transparency is also really important, and that's why we publish our sustainability report every year. More widely across our platforms, we've recently announced new efforts to combat climate crisis misinformation on our platforms. And that's included by expanding our Climate Science Centre to provide more reliable information, investing in organisations that fight misinformation, and also launching a video series to highlight young climate advocates, both on Facebook and Instagram. For the wider industry, I think there's a lot that we can do in the battle against climate change. And history's shown that advertising can and does shift consumer behaviour. And I think there's absolutely no reason that marketing can't do this in support of a more sustainable way of life. I also think we need to address the need for regulation, specifically around climate communications. And the CMA have produced the Green Claims Code, which outlines what businesses need to do to make sure that their environmental claims are not misleading or greenwashing, which I think is actually a really good point to start from.
So, Hamish at Dentsu, tell us what's Dentsu's position in terms of sustainability? I don't know what changes you may have been making, particularly in the last year, where that's coming from inside the organisation.
It's a massive, all-encompassing issue for us, and a huge priority for us at Dentsu. As you know, we've been through a period of pretty big business transformation, and this issue of sustainability has been at the forefront of much of that strategy and the transformation. It's one of our core pillars, actually, of our new strategy. And so that's why we're setting ourselves, some industry-leading targets, both in terms of ambition and results. And let me share a couple of those with you now. We were the first holding company to set a net zero target. And we have a science-based target for emissions reduction, which is actually the highest level of ambition a company can set. And we're also aiming to do things like reducing our flight emissions by a significant amount. And we've set ourselves the target of helping, 1 billion people make more sustainable choices through our work by 2030. And, there's lots more numbers like that, but they're not just fluffy PR numbers. As I say, they are central to the business plan that we have. And we've put an infrastructure behind the fact that we want to achieve those. Because we have a board level sustainability leader in Anna Lungley who drives our strategy that we launched last year of this. And of course, it's got sponsorship from the exec board and our CEO, Wendy Clark. And the fact is we're making good progress, right? We are an A rated on CDP, which is the Carbon Disclosure Project. Again, it's the highest performance for our sector. And we were the first in the industry to achieve 100% renewable electricity across all of our global operations. But the reality is, a net zero world is going to require us all to fundamentally rethink the way that we live, the way that we play, and the way that we work. And that's why we're making this so fundamental to our strategy as a business.
Okay, good. And I'm sure all of your companies will claim in different ways, probably completely correctly, that you're leaders in what you do in terms of sustainability. And maybe there does need to be a sense of competition about it, in the sense that it's to push everyone to push harder. I'm going to go back to Nicola, because I'm interested in, if I can ask this question, how do you personally feel about this? Because I guess all of us are individuals, and there's this sort of corporate responsibility, but there's also the personal responsibility as an advertising professional. What you're doing, what others could consider doing.
I think, well, for me personally, it's a really important issue. And I do think it's here something where every little action that we all take can really make a really big difference. So whether it's the recycling that you do in the home, or the upcycling that you do, or the thinking about the purchasing, I think all these things are really important. And certainly my family knows that I'm a little bit obsessed about all this, from the water bottles, the glass. I'm all in, because it's really clear, that if we don't take action now, that the latest IPCC report is very clear that there's going to be a reversible and drastic change to life on this planet as we know it. And we know that clock is ticking, and it's ticking really fast. From my role at Facebook, well, it's about helping to shape Facebook as a force for good and a force to combat climate change. And as an industry, I think we've all got a responsibility to address greenwashing by making sure that we're strengthening marketers and agencies' literacy in sustainability and also data transparency. So I think we've got to promote, and I think we've got to celebrate sustainability to inspire others. And I think there's a lot we can do, and we've all got to galvanize each other to get out there and actually do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I recently hosted a campaign event where I was talking to a number of marketers on stage about net zero and improving the supply chain, something Ronan you touched on earlier. And I think there's quite a lot of people who don't know that much yet about it. So to Nicola's point about maybe improving literacy around this, what you should be doing as a company, and a lot of that does include accurate information, but also we do have to be aware of misinformation. Nicola touched on it. So Ronan, I know Google just recently has been talking about addressing climate change related misinformation on the platform. And obviously you're an advertising business, or fundamentally you are. Tell us what you've been doing about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think making sure that people have the right information, can educate themselves. Without doing that, they're not going to be able to make good choices. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to enable a conversation across our platforms on this. We want people to be able to get information from diverse sources, but we certainly don't want people out there promoting and getting rewarded from active misinformation. So we've changed our policies, for example, to make sure that we prohibit ads across any of the content that contradicts well-established scientific consensus on the existence or indeed the causes of climate change. So that's something that's in place. And I think importantly, it's not just us deciding what is right and what is wrong here. We work with a very wide and broad church of experts to help define where is the broad consensus on the scientific matters around climate change, and which aspects of what we do next are still need to be debated and need to be. So we worked with experts across people like the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We consulted a lot with Conscious Advertising Network, who were brilliant in their assistance and perspectives on this. So really pleased to see the new policy get off the ground and to reinforce high quality information out on the open web. Something else that we're doing, because we've done some research on how this is playing out in the UK as well, for in particular small businesses, because when they're confronted with the question of climate change, they often don't know where to start. They don't know how to calculate their own emissions. So we've partnered with two groups, one called Planet Mark, where we're working with them to create a suite of very practical education for small businesses about what are the practical steps they can take to reduce their own carbon emissions. And we're also working with a company called Normative, and we've given them a funding grant and also a team of Google engineers to help them build a carbon accounting infrastructure, so that it's really, today less than 1 in 10 SMEs actually measure their carbon footprint. So we're helping provide an infrastructure in collaboration with the government that will enable them to do that really easy, and hopefully in combination with the training will help them feel like they can set a plan and they make some real progress on it. So I think it's us on our platforms making sure that the information is accurate and correct, but also figuring out how do we proactively get good practical information into the hands of those who are thinking about it but not knowing where to start.
Great. I'm going to go to Debbie now, partly because I think of Sky employing lots of journalists and program makers who can make great content and hopefully accurate information about some of this. And Ed, but I'm going to open up my question and say, how much influence do you think our industry, advertising and media, how much influence do you think our industry has to change the path we're all on? And then how can advertising help other industries, and which I guess includes clients, make genuine, climate action a reality?
Yeah, I think the ability to actually change behavior, the next big frontier, we think we'll be thinking not just about how we reduce our own carbon footprint. We spent a lot of time today talking about that, but how we actually drive that behavior change in others. And there is no way that we can deliver on our collective net zero goal unless we have a widespread shift in behavior from millions of people. So our industry can be hugely influential in so many ways. We reach millions. We are creative storytellers. And, we work tirelessly to really understand consumer behavior change and reflect that in the stories we tell, be that as advertising industry or broadcasting, the broader media industry. So we've actually done some really interesting work with the behavioral insights team to predict the best ways to actually nudge society and make changes and help people adapt and select less carbon intensive behaviors and content we put on screen, be that any content that goes on screen. And the findings are really interesting. So it shows that 3 out of 4 people actively support people like TV broadcasters taking further action to encourage and put things into storylines and content. People are really concerned. They want to know what to do and how to do it. They feel really overwhelmed by choice. And they are actually unclear on what actions will make a difference. We gave people 19 sustainable actions, recycling, transport choices, and only 16% knew what they needed to do and how they should do it. So only, I think, 2 in 10 people said they knew how to recycle or save energy in the home. So people don't want to be lectured to. They don't want scaremongering. They want normal, familiar storytelling. And children can be really key to it, we found, to really getting that conversation going in the home. So I think advertising and content creators can make a real difference. And people want them to. People want us to. So whether that is the content we put on screen with Sky News, we have the Daily Climate Show, which is the first primetime news show about climate, or in fact what we do behind the camera, or what we do more broadly as an advertising industry, I think we've got a huge role to play in actually nudging that behavior change. But no single voice can do that on its own. We really want to work in partnership with the broader industry, have active voices from across advertising, from across broadcasting, and challenge ourselves to take our commitment further by collectively embedding some of that content in what we are serving up to consumers and what they are hearing from us every day.
Now, Hamish, we know that advertising helps to promote consumption. It's an important part of the effectiveness of advertising. So some will argue that actually the advertising industry is partly responsible for the carbon emissions of the industries that we promote, effectively of the clients. So can you give me a sort of perspective? You've got a whole broad range of clients, and arguably their advertising and media campaigns are designed to sell more products and services, which could lead to higher emissions.
Yeah, look, I think that's a big statement. There's a big question in there, and we could have a whole conference dedicated to that, Gideon. But I'll do my best to sort of give you a perspective in a couple of minutes. I say, look, while of course it can be argued that selling more stuff, as you say, has always been the focus of the industry, it's also true to say that advertising alone isn't responsible for the emissions that consumption creates. In the same way, I guess that you can't say financial services are responsible because they provide bank accounts and credit cards with which you pay for goods, or the logistics industry because they deliver stuff, etc., etc. But like almost every industry in some way, or other, either directly or indirectly, we have and do play a part, right? And we have to be honest about that. If we're to lay claim, which I would like to, and Debbie has alluded to just now too, that we can be a big part of the solution. Because, in my opinion, here's the thing, right? The role that we've played and the skills that we've got that have stimulated that demand and got people to buy stuff and to change their behaviors is actually a critical part of the solution too. Our power is not just in our ability to sell stuff, but our ability to change the way that people think, feel and act. Because if you think about it, every time a consumer goes to the till, they're kind of voting on this subject. They've got a choice they can make. And we can help them make better choices, which is why we're targeting to reach 1 billion people to make more sustainable ones by 2030. You know, we can make plant-based food or electric vehicles or recycling or green pensions. You know, we can make them irresistible to consumers, because that's what we do when we apply our creativity. And, you know, while consumer attitudes are changing, their behaviors aren't moving quickly enough. So we do need to use the skills we've got to take that and to actually change behaviors. And, you know, while that sort of mindset work and shift is probably the most powerful thing we can do, the ad industry has also got its own supply chains. And I know that, you know, Ronan and Debbie have just mentioned this too, but, you know, we can do things in that space. We can help our clients think differently about the emissions that are related to the placement and production. And, you know, and again, as Debbie's just talked about collaboration, you know, we totally agree with that. We think we have to work together, which is why we're doing things like AdGreen and Dimpact, which, you know, for those who don't know, Dimpact is a sort of a collaboration with Bristol University and some of the most progressive media owners out there, like Sky, you know, a partner on this. And what it is, it's a web-based tool that calculates greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with serving media content. So if you can take that and then create, as we have, you know, a media calculator that allows you to see the emissions and how they're linked to your media choices, you can then make proactive and informed decisions about the type of digital advertising that you want to use. And you can do that through the lens of emissions. So I guess to go back to your question, yes, we have to be honest, right, as all industries do, about the impact that we have and are having on the climate crisis. But we now have to use our skills that have made our industry so valuable to help solve the problem, because we really can if we collaborate and put our minds together.
Yeah, very interesting. And I actually spoke to Wendy Clark, who you mentioned, who runs Dentsu International, and she said an interesting point about how, especially the youngest generation, the people who've entered the industry and perhaps people who are not yet even in the workplace, really have an expectation, not only that companies do the right thing, but actually they're sort of effectively putting back. And Debbie, you touched about the importance of sort of children in shaping this debate. I mean, it feels to me like there is a bit of a generational issue, that younger people really feel incredibly strongly about this, and that it's potentially quite a big issue if companies they need to lead on this, because otherwise it could be actually a negative for a company's reputation and talent. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I think we absolutely find that when we are I have responsibility for people at Sky, and this is something that people are really, really interested in. They want to know, and they want to know what our commitments are, and they want to know that we're putting it at the heart of the business, thinking about it when we create products, when we put content out. And I think it really matters. I mean, it matters more broadly now, but I would say the younger people, you know, early careers, it's hugely important for talent attraction as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think when we do it, you know, as I said, we launched our strategy last year of what we're going to do to tackle this. And since then, in all the staff surveys that we've done, this has come out incredibly highly as something that people value and appreciate that we're doing in this space. So it is massively important. And I would say that actually it seems to span across all generations. You know, people really are passionate about this. And as Debbie said, it's one that is going to be a key to, you know, talent retention and acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just pick up on one more thing, which is we sort of talked about, several of you have sort of talked about advertising's ability to drive behavior change and sort of positive change. I know in some other countries, for example, France, that some of the restrictions have become quite aggressive. It's almost as if you've got to try and take people with you, say, to convert from petrol to electric. I don't know if you feel that the UK, if there are any lessons here for how we navigate this. I don't know, Ronan, if you wanted to pick up on that in terms of the ability to drive positive behavior change, but maybe it's difficult to jump in one go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did some research recently on this about where consumers placed the responsibility for this. And what was really interesting is that they came back and held government, business, and themselves equally responsible for making progress on this and making it faster. And I think what we're all waking up to is that we have been kind of slow off the mark, and we now need to accelerate quite quickly. And Debbie talked about culture change. And I think, you know, the power of her platform and the way in which they're using it with their climate change program is really driving massive awareness and understanding of the impact of us not taking action and of us not getting it right. And I think the more we can tell stories like that, and the advertising industry is a storytelling industry. We are the ones that have got the ability to be able to go out and help inform consumers about where the choices are, but also help to inform the advertisers as well as they build out these journeys. And I don't think it needs to be a question of you can't be profitable and be on a journey towards net zero. It's both, but we just need to innovate along the way. Just a very simple example. We had an e-commerce partner who clearly over the last 18 months saw a huge uptick in the number of deliveries they were making. Their employees got concerned around, well, are we not just causing an issue with all of the packaging, in particular bubble wrap? They worked with us, and using some of our search insights, we were able to see what are the things that are on the mind of the British population when it comes to recycling. There was a huge question around recycling of bubble wrap. So we worked with this company. They incorporated messaging into their packaging and into their e-commerce front end, so that they were communicating with their customers about, here's how you can stay environmentally conscious, how you can recycle this stuff. We're going to make it easy for you. And I think what ended up happening was they improved their relationship with their environmentally conscious clients, because they were educating them, they were giving them tools to live a more sustainable life, and I think in the process deepened their relationship with that customer base as well. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's definitely a question of and, but we just have to innovate and be more fleet of foot in how we message and create those stories.
Well, I definitely think the fleet of foot issue is important. I know it's hard to predict the near future, but I'm really aware that some people feel so strongly that there's quite a lot of people who are prepared to get aggressive in terms of direct action. And I think advertisers often, as the communicators of the message, can get targeted. So I'm going to end on a positive note by saying, all of you think deeply about this. So what advice would you give someone watching who wants to take positive climate action in their day-to-day working life as an advertising professional? I feel that, Nicola, I sort of asked you about personal responsibility before, so I'm going to come to you at the end just for a final thought. Can I start with you, Debbie? What advice would you give someone? What can they do personally at work as an advertising professional to make a difference now?
I'd say two things. When it comes to environmental impact, we all have an opportunity to inspire others in their day-to-day decisions. It's lots and lots of small decisions, and I don't think they should be an afterthought. They should be business as usual. So I would say to everyone, ask yourself, how can you use your voice? It doesn't have to be a platform which reaches 20 million people a day. How can you use your voice in your decisions when you're talking about anything that you're making, doing, creating, to make a difference, to ask the right questions? And then secondly, I'd say it's really important to bring a really positive and ambitious mindset to this topic. And because we're chasing hard targets, it's really hard stuff. But I think you want to do it in a way where you hold people to account, but you are inspiring people to create change, so that it's a topic people are excited about. It's not a sort of negative, downbeat, hair shirt conversation. And I think both of those things I try and bring to my sort of day-to-day working with our broader team.
All right, Hamish?
I'd say, we often talk to clients about having skin in the game with them, right? Where we link our success to the success of their businesses. And I'd say to people who want to get involved, think like that, right? Because if you think about it, there is no campaign or business challenge that we'll ever work on that will have more of a positive impact on all of us personally if we're successful in this way. And if we're not successful, it just doesn't bear thinking about. So I'd urge them all to find a way to do what Wendy, our CEO, says, is to look at this as the biggest creative assignment the industry has ever had, and get involved wherever we can to use the talent that we've got to communicate to this and to help ensure that we move people and to nudge them into that behavior change, because we've got a massive opportunity to make a huge difference here if we all get together and do this.
Good. Ronan, it's got to be quick.
Create space to agree as a team, as a business, as a family. What are you going to do? If you don't know where to start and you're working in this industry, start with the AdNat Zero and the 5 things that are set out there. They're pretty clear. Talk to your peers. Everybody's working on this. They'll be able to give you some ideas.
Okay, and Nicola, last word to you.
Thanks, Gideon. Well, as I started with, I'd say it starts with you and the personal responsibility you take. I agree with Debbie, lots of little things that we do in our lives, but also in our business lives as well. And I'd also argue that we need creativity and innovation more than we've ever to drive new consumer behaviors and new business models. And we need passion. And this is an industry filled with passionate people working across all different levels. It doesn't matter what level you are, what role, what business you're in, you can make a difference. And if you're not sure where to start, I'd agree with Ronan. Look at the 5 actions taken and laid out by AdNet Zero, and together, all those actions together with all that passion, all those people, that's how we can start to see the change that all of us want to have sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you so much to all 4 of you for joining us. I've really enjoyed it. And I think there's some good takeaways for us to think about now and obviously going into the future. So thank you.